Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Yesterday I put out a video of how to install the new exporter, the Asobo uh, glTF exporter for Blender 3.1. I didn't get into a lot of detail about the exporter, so today's video we're going to get a little more detailed on at least getting your model exported and that it correctly creates the bin, the glTF, and the XML. So a few things that you need to understand that this exporter will kind of force you into organizing your projects. Okay. Case in point, this terminal that I'm working on right now, this update that I'm doing for one of my airports, I haven't touched this airport for actually a little over a year, and it's time to give it some love. Well, my organization skills weren't as they're I learned a lot, okay? And that actually causes some issues with the new exporter. Okay, I'll show you really quick. I got my BK scene and I made a copy of the one that I'm working on just so I don't ruin it. All right, so I got a scene 5XA, okay, and that is the state in which this project that I'm creating it, okay? Now, if we come over here to the table of contents, you'll notice in the contents I have all my objects, okay? And I'm scrolling through a whole bunch of them. I do have collections created, so I have one for the main terminal, and I have one for exterior lights, such as light masts out on the ramp and stuff like that. I also have a couple other terminal buildings and some breezeways, the ATC tower, and just a whole, you know, I have things organized in collections, all right? And I thought that was good enough, okay? However, with every wonderful new software update that we do, we find out, oh, I need to do it this way now. Okay, well, basically what I did with the old exporter, that the way that my logic was in setting up my projects wasn't such a big deal, okay? For instance, I could simply select everything that was in my main terminal, okay? But I also wanted the exterior lights, so I'd do a shift and I would select all the exterior lights, and then I would select the tower, and then I would select terminal 1. And the reason that I put those together is because physically they're all one building, okay? It's just that the characteristics in the building made me want to organize. Okay, I'll show you. I'll zoom out here. So here's the main terminal, okay, the two-story part with all the glass, and I'm still working on it. Okay, and terminal 1 is this long addition to the terminal. It's usually where the airport operations offices and some classrooms and stuff like that. But then the tower is actually connected to that wing as well. All right. So I didn't want to create a model just for this area and then a model for terminal 1 and then a model for, I mean, when I say model, I mean in the model lib, a separate object, okay? I didn't want to create these three because they are physically connected to each other. And if I had them as separate objects, when I brought them into the sim, I'd have to reconnect them. Okay, so in my logic in Blender was to create my collections so I can organize, okay, when I want to work on the tower, I just go to that collection and work on those pieces. When I go to terminal 1, same thing. Main terminal, same thing. Okay, now with the new exporter, that logic is not as, it's just not as good in my opinion. Okay, maybe I'm just old and I don't want to change, but anyway, I'm gonna. So basically I would select everything for the main terminal, shift, and select everything for terminal 1, and then select everything for the tower, and then all my light masts, because I wanted Blender to control the location. So when I put them in the sim, they're exactly where they needed to be. So I do a bunch of shift clicks and shift alts and control alts and all that kind of stuff. And I'd get everything that I selected. Then I would go to File, Export, and then export that out as main terminal. Okay, even though this is terminal 1 and this is the tower, I called this whole assembly right here main terminal. Okay, so in the previous version, the Blender to MSFS exporter, I could get away with doing that. However, with Asobo's new exporter, you can't. Okay, at least I haven't found the way to do it yet. Okay, and if I do, I will update you on that. So let me show you what you need to do. So here I have, if you notice over here in the tree, I have towers is separate, and I have all of this. I have all my lights. They're in their own collection. Okay, but I want them to still come over as one object, main terminal, in the sim. Okay, so basically what I had to do was select all that stuff and hit the M key in Blender and move those to the collection that I wanted them in, which was main terminal. Okay, so I had to do all this stuff. Let me go ahead and open up 5X. I don't want to save that. This might take a couple seconds here because it's a pretty big file. Okay, I have 5X open, and that's the one that I'm starting to do my exports from now, because I have them set up the way that the new exporter wants me to. All right, yeah, you'll notice that you see a green box around a bunch of stuff. That's an environmental occlusion box. I did a video on this a while back, but if you put an environmental occlusion block around all your buildings and stuff, it won't rain and snow inside your building. So that's what those green boxes are. So if I come over here in the tree, here's main terminal. That's the collection main terminal. And then underneath that has everything that I used to just do shift clicks. They're all moved into that one collection. So I got everything. I got the lights, I got the tower. You know, I have everything that I selected before in the main terminal collection. Okay? Now, another thing that I did, now let me minimize main terminal. So here are the collections that I have in the project. Okay, the only one that was an issue was main terminal, because I selected more than just the main terminal for that object. Okay, but Terminal 2, Terminal 3, they're separate buildings. The breezeway, that was a separate building. The air garden, where I have my F4 Phantoms out front for the Thunderbird and the Blue Angel. And then the west garage and the west maintenance building, those were separate objects, okay, that I added into the sim individually. Okay, so here, knowing that, so I would come into this project and I would select the main, make my changes, select everything that belonged to the main terminal, export it out. Make any changes to any of the other buildings, export those out as their objects, right? Everybody with me on this? Okay. So every time that I did a update, I would have to export each one of those individually, and I'd have to rename the type, you know, the typing of the name of the object and all that kind of stuff. Here's the cool thing, all right? Let me explain a couple things here. Now, remember last video showed you how to install the exporter. Okay, so I'm assuming that you have your exporter installed. So in Blender, bring up your model. Okay, so here we have our terminal. Everything, the terminal building. Here's Terminal 2, Terminal 3. Actually, those aren't used for terminals anymore. This is the International Women's Air and Space Museum. Okay, but now I have all my main terminal stuff in this collection, and then all these collections are separate objects that I write out and import into the sim. So if you come over here to the multi-export glTF 2.0 menu that gets added once you enable the exporter. Remember last time I talked about I didn't show you how to use them, but I mentioned the objects, the presets, and the settings. Okay, the settings looks pretty much familiar with the old Blender 2 MSFS exporter. Okay, there's a couple new things in there, renderable objects, active collection, you know, that kind of, there's a few little new things in there. And we won't talk about those too much because I don't use those very often. But you're getting ready to do your model. I mean, you're getting ready to export your model. Okay? So what you'll do is you'll go over to the Objects tab. Okay? And these you set up once. For each Blender project that you have, you only have to set this up once, okay? And then when you have all of this set up, every time you do an export, it automatically has the characteristics of that export, okay? So the first thing that I do is I come over to settings and I make sure that I have my /texture/ for the directory that the textures are going to be written to, and that's usually the texture directory in your model lib folder. Okay, and then I make sure that I have my custom properties selected, my UVs, apply modifiers, tangent. Flight Sim doesn't deal with tangents anyway. All right, so anyway, I make sure all my boxes are checked that need to be, just like we always have. All right. Then I go over to Objects, and you'll notice that, okay, by default, Grouped by Collections is not checkmarked. So just make sure you check that box, and you can reload your levels of detail. Basically, that just says reread this tree over here. Okay, so you can click that and you'll get a list of all of your collections. So here's the air garden, the breezeway. I have one actually. Oh, this just has the camera, the empty, and the light in it. I'll never export that one. Then there's main terminal, Terminal 2, 3, etc. Okay, so in the objects tab, it shows you all of the collections that you have in your project. Okay, so we're almost there. The cool thing is that you come in here, and I know for a fact that okay, now I created I'm sorry, I'm digressing. Not really, it's related. I've created a test folder. I'm not writing into my actual airport. Okay, so I have one that I call test block project. All right, and I have an object, and I'm pretending that this is my model lib directory, and I have test block, I have test terminal, and I can create another one called let's call this term 2, okay, for terminal 2, whatever. Okay, so I have all of these folders in my model lib. Okay, now you can come over in the objects tab, and you can come down to just the ones that you want to work with to begin with. So here's main terminal, okay, and I want this one. All right, so I'm going to click the folder, and I'm going to migrate over to where I've been doing my testing, which is in my Blender Learn and test block project. Okay, so this is my pretend model lib folder for my project. Okay, and I want that main terminal XML right here. Okay, I want that to be written to test terminal. Okay, this would be in the real model, this would be called main terminal, right? Okay, so here's that directory. So I accept that directory, and it puts the path into the folder. All right, so when it generates the XML, it's going to write it to this path. This file name is, make sure you click this checkbox here. This file name right here is the name of the XML, the glTF, and the bin that it's going to create. All right. By default, it makes it the same name as the collection, and I will leave it alone. Okay. I'll name my collections the way that I want my objects to be named. Okay. So this is set up. So anytime I do an export, it's automatically going to do this box. All right. Now I created one for terminal 2, so I come down here to terminal 2 and select and go to the path and select term 2, accept, and that writes that folder into the path. Click terminal 2 because I'm going to want it to create that for me. Okay. Now, if you don't want to generate the XML, you can go ahead and turn the ones off that you do not want to activate yet. Okay. So I don't want any of these XMLs to be created yet because I'm not ready for them yet. If I was ready for them, I would just go ahead and leave them, and I would set up all their paths. Okay. Now, if you don't need to update a model, you can turn those off. Okay. But in this case, I'm going to create my glTFs and my XMLs for these two objects. Okay. Now, with all of this set, anytime I come back into this project, all I have to do is make my edits and then click the export. That's it. All right. And I'll show you that here in a second. Okay. So I can come in, do an edit, and then as soon as I save it, I can just, since I have them here, I can just hit export. So another way of saying this is, before had to select all my, I had to select all of my objects, then export, right? Well, if you have them set up in the Objects tab, you don't need to do that. All you have to do is have everything set up in this window, and then when you hit export, just like I just did, you get that famous black box. And if I open up, go into test terminal, there they are, gets written in there. Okay, let's look at term 2. You guys saw me create term 2, double click that, and there they are. All right, and nothing else was created. All right, it didn't create all those other ones because I told them not to. Okay, so now if I come back into this project at any point in time and I make a change to either term 2 or main terminal, I get done with my change, bam, hit export, it's done. Okay, now if I make a change to a different part of the model, then I come down to this box and I put the path to where I want the XML, click the generate, and click the checkbox for that object. Then I do an export and it will create that one too. Okay, if I don't want to recreate the main terminal and term 2, I would just simply come in and turn those off. Okay, and turn the one that on that I want. You guys with me? Okay. Now let's go to the next tab. Let's go to the presets. Presets are kind of like the objects in a way. Okay. The only thing is that presets are layer oriented. Okay. And instead of saying collection, they change the word to layer. All right. Now, I probably won't use presets very often because I think the object tab does everything that I want. Okay. But when you do a preset, if you enable the preset, there's not going to be anything in here to begin with. So you give your preset a name. Okay, it's going to have preset 1 in there by default. And then it's going to have some stupid path that you probably never use. Okay, I think it's at your user level. Okay, so you give a preset a name. So let's say I called this one main terminal preset, and the export path is the same as I did in the objects tab. Okay, but you can also add multiple collections to that glTF. Okay, now here's the confusing thing. Okay, and I have not found anything around this yet. Okay, when I do, I will give you an update. The preset, if you notice when I edit layer, I can click terminal 2, and if I had one for all my lights and stuff separate, I can click it. All right, and then when I hit OK, anytime I export my main terminal preset, it will export those other collections to that glTF. It's just like I went into the tree and selected things in the old version of the export. Okay. You're starting to think that, well, that's what I'd want to use, right? Problem is, you do that, it doesn't create an XML. Yeah, you heard me right. It does not create an XML. All right. I think that's a flaw unless I am not using it correctly. And there is a chance that Christopher isn't using it correctly. He's probably done that before in his life. Okay? So anyway, this is the closest thing that I found to selecting everything that I want in my tree. Just like I did it back in the olden days. Okay? However, I did that and it didn't create the XML. It created the glTF, but that was all it created. All right, so that's preset. I usually have that enabled right now until I get more information. All right, man, people need to write some documentation on stuff, don't they? All right, so we talked about the settings tab where you go ahead and type in your path to your textures, turn on your custom properties, turn on your Y-up, your modifiers and your normals and your UVs. Okay, turn on all that stuff. And animations, I've never used that tab to begin with. Even, I can't even remember if I had to use it when I did a radar tower or not. Put it in the comments if you guys use the animation tab. I can't remember if I did or not. I don't do much animation, but I mean I have, but I do so little animation that I just have to relearn it to get familiar with it again. Okay, I think we all understand that. Okay, so we talked about the settings tab. Like I said, the settings tab looks just like the exporter before. But the big area is the objects. Organize your projects into collections, and just know that this tab, the objects tab, as powerful as it is that you can set all this stuff up ahead of time and never have to do this part again. You have to organize your projects that this is logical. Okay? So everything in a collection needs to be a part of the model that you're doing. Okay? And the logic that I used previously isn't bad. Okay? It's bad for this model, but it's not bad. Because, see, I have these light masts out on the ramp, and I want them to be the exact distance away from the building, and I can do all my measuring and layout in Blender that I can't do in the scenery editor in the sim. Because the scenery editor in the sim isn't precise enough for me. Okay, I'm a cartographer. I used to work construction, so I mean measuring and laying out things is pretty kind of natural for me, and the sim doesn't really allow me that power, right? Okay. Anyway, I'm probably just telling you too much about my life and not enough about Blender and the exporter, right? Okay, so I hope this clears some air from the last video. Play with the exporter, set up your models, do some exporting. I would do some test exporting first, not right into your actual project. Get used to it, see how things are acting, and things like that. What am I going to do next time? Okay, well, what I'm going to do next time is we are going to talk about the material params, okay? Because they are different. Let's say if I was doing a material and I wanted a standard, the list looks a little different now. It's cleaner actually, but if I did standard, All right, there's some new settings. There's new settings in the material parameters for certain types of activities. The big one that I use all the time that we have to be aware of, and I have no idea where I am. There I am. Is like glass. Okay, it used to be where I can select glass, select the color, select the emissive color, and then change the alpha for the transparency and all that kind of stuff. It's slightly different now. So once I get this hammered down, I will do another video here in the next few days. It may be next week by the time I get to it, but I'm going to concentrate on learning, deciphering how they're doing the material parameters so we can all have that understanding. Okay, so hey, appreciate you guys coming back and watching me talk and talk and talk. I hope I gave you some useful information, and just like always, here's the commercial. Please subscribe, hit the notification bell for upcoming videos, and if you feel inclined, buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com, my physical world. I appreciate you guys. You guys are great for keeping coming back and supporting my channel by watching my videos and stuff. You guys are awesome. This is a great community, and I wish you the best, and I will see you on the next video. See you guys later.